mentioned previously, anti-diuretic hormone. ADH will act on the collecting ducts to absorb water. And if we have reduced ADH, what disease do we develop? Diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus. And what does that mean then? If this is antidiuretic, this hormone, we get rid of it, then we have diuresis, which is just excessive urination. What does diabetes mean? Diabetes means to pass through. And with this kind of diabetes, it's water that's passing through. So when you interrupt this path in the rat just sits by the water fountain all day long. Water's just passing through. It has no antidiuretic hormone. I put this in at this time because you usually talk about obesity and diabetes, but there are two kinds of diabetes. One for water passing through and diabetes mellitus. So what's passing through here? What does mellitus mean? Means honey. They didn't give it sugar, they just knew it was sweet. So this is sugar passing through. So you don't, after having a class like this, just say somebody has diabetes. Is it diabetes mellitus or is it diabetes insipidus? All right, you can see there's a big difference. All right, with that now, let's go to our collecting ducts. We formed urine. This whole nephron was secretory, right? It was forming the urine. It was our nephron. Now, we take the urine. We're not going to be changing it. It's just got to get out of the kidney. And so let's see how it gets out. So we once again go back to our kidney where we showed we had a medulla and a cortex. This was our medulla. This was our cortex. And we have all these collecting ducts coming down now. They've been up here collecting from all these nephrons. We'll just make a lot of them coming in. And they come down into sort of a pyramid shape down here. So we speak about the pyramids of the kidneys. These are the pyramids in medulla, and it's just their arrangement of collecting ducts. But we want to find out how they're pouring the urine into the next stage, leaving the kidney. So we'll have these pyramids coming in. And they'll be coming into what are called calyces. And these will be receiving the pyramids. And then we'll have these coming together. They'll eventually come together. So we'll have the minor calyces. Calyx is singular for just this one. And then we have major, just so you're familiar with the terms, where do they come from when you study kidneys? A major calyx would be two coming together, and then the major calyces come together and will form, clean this up a bit here, excuse me. They'll form the pelvis of the kidney, and then that's the pelvis of the ureter. This will be the pelvis, and our ureter will be here as we continue down. But that gives us a general idea of how this, let's call this pelvis of ureter or ureter, whichever you like. And now you can see this pelvis is down here, so we're leaving the kidney. We had put the pelvis in previously. So let's follow our ureter. How big is your ureter? How long? The ureter, it's about 10 to 12 inches. And it's conveying then the urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder. And it will have what's called transitional epithelium. This is one we haven't encountered before. Transitional epithelium lines it. Transitional epithelium. What does that mean? It means that it can change its shape. So if you have a lot of urine coming down, it gets thinner as the ureter expands. But when there's no urine, it can contract, and you see changes in the epithelium. So it can change shape. Depending on flow of urine. And then it will have, the ureter will have the smooth muscle layers, two smooth muscle layers. Now what's interesting about the production of urine down the transport of urine down the ureter is that it's not just a continuous flow. There are intermittent contractions every 2 to 3 minutes. The walls contract and pass urine along. So it's not a continuous flow. So it's not just gravity working, so you can still be passing urine down your ureter if you're standing on your head because of this controlled constriction going down. So now we want to bring the urine into the bladder, and how does it do that? What part of the bladder does it enter? Let's look at a lateral view of the lower abdominal wall and the pelvic cavity. So this is just a lateral view. And we'll have the kidney with its pelvis and its ureter coming down. Ureter is also retroperitoneal, as is the kidney we mentioned last time. And we're coming in now to the posterior aspect of the urinary bladder. I put this a little too far away. Let me pull it over. Take this off here. I guess a female bladder. So this is the urinary bladder. And we're entering in the posterior inferior bladder. And why is this important to know? You've heard of hysterectomies when they remove the uterus. Well, we'll see in a minute that the uterus is back here. Sometimes when they remove the uterus, they nick the ureter. So constant flow of urine is coming out from that female. I was in the hospital when the lady next to me had happened to her. So you don't forget those things. All right, let's look now at an anterior view of the urinary bladder. Again, we'll just take the female. And we'll see two little holes here in this posterior wall. These are for the entrance of ureter. And this is the urethra to take the urine to the exterior. Clinicians will refer to the trigone of the bladder. What do they mean by trigone? If we put a hypothetical line across between the ureters and down to the urethra, this area here is the trigone. Now, a question you might ask, when the bladder contracts for you to urinate, what prevents the urine from going back up the ureters? There's a fold of mucous membrane over the opening of the ureter to prevent a reflux. Prevent reflux. Now, what can we say about the bladder? Well, it's a hollow organ. It's lined again with transitional epithelium because after you urinate, it shrinks. Epithelium has to be adaptable. So it has transitional epithelium. And then lots of smooth muscle. They call the smooth muscle of the bladder the detrusor muscle. You'll see that term, detrusor muscle. And the muscle will have stretch receptors. It's the stretch receptor stimulation that lets you know when you need to urinate. Has stretch receptors. that indicate time to urinate. Excuse me. Also, medically, they use the term micturition for urination. I don't know, but I checked the books today just to be sure that the new books are still using it, and they do. So interchangeably, urination or micturition. So the texts say that the bladder has the capacity to hold up to 700 or 800 cc's of urine. Capacity to hold 700 to 800 cc's. But just a little side point, many of the fellows used to say they didn't like to take girls as transport them down to Los Angeles from Berkeley, because they had to stop too many times for the girls to urinate. So they asked me whose bladder is bigger, the male or the female, and I'm still on the search for that. I call UCSF, Department of Urology, and they sort of guess, but I can't find a book. So if you find out if females have smaller bladders than males, that's why they urinate more frequently, or the fact that their pelvis has an additional organ down there. It has the uterus, so the area is smaller. Who knows? But anyhow, if anybody feels insulted if somebody asks them how many times they have to stop going from Berkeley to San Francisco, to Berkeley to LA, you'll understand why the question arises. All right, let's see. That gets us through the bladder. And now we want to look at the urethra. Urethra obviously differs considerably between males and females. Urethra, as we said, goes from bladder to exterior. In the female, the urethra is about 1.5 inches long. In the male, it's between 7 and 8 inches long. Let's take the female first. Her whole urethra is surrounded with smooth muscle. Smooth muscle surrounds whole urethra. So it's called the internal sphincter. Internal sphincter. And it says it's under control to prevent dripping coming from the bladder. Quote, unquote textbooks. Whereas the external sphincter is at the opening. External sphincter. And of course, then that's going to be voluntary, so it's skeletal muscle. Now, in contrast, as we look at the male, let's take an anterior view. We'll have the urinary bladder and the urethra. And we'll start with then putting in structures surrounding the urethra. Let's begin with the prostate gland. We'll discuss these in greater detail when we do the male reproductive system. Right now we're just trying to get urine out of the body. So this is the prostate gland. And then we have what's called the urogenital diaphragm, skeletal muscle. Urogenital diaphragm. So we'll stop for a moment with those, because we have then between the prostate and the bladder our internal sphincter. This represents our internal sphincter. And that, of course, is smooth muscle. And again, prevents dripping. And the urogenital diaphragm then represents the external sphincter. You might expect the external sphincter to be down at the opening, as it is with the female urethra. But his external sphincter is here. And that's skeletal muscle. So we divide the urethra into 3 divisions. Three divisions of urethra. The first one will be the prostatic division. Prostatic division. The second one will be the membranous. It's this part of the urethra in our urogenital diaphragm, so it's called membranous division. And the major part will be the cavernous urethra. Cavernous urethra will be in the penis. And we'll see that when we develop the penis with the male reproductive system. So we have roughly, the prostatic is 1 inch long. The membranous varies with the literature. Some say 1/2 inch long to an inch. And then that leaves the cavernous up to maybe 7 inches long. So those are the various divisions with, let's be sure that I've given you the majority of things I wanted to give you here. Oh, it's interesting just to know that the epithelium does vary within the urethra of the male. The epithelium of male urethra. First part is going to be transitional. And then we're going to have stratified columnar. Some say it's pseudo-stratified, so in case you read that. And then we have stratified squamous. But the urethra in the male will be used for both sperm. We'll show how the sperm come in. But when the sperm are coming in, this will close so that the urine does not occur at the same time that the semen is using the urethra. All right? Now, with that, we begin a whole new system, our endocrine system. What are some basic characteristics of our endocrine system? We have, in this system, individual ductless glands. Individual ductless glands. And these glands are rich in capillaries. We need the blood supply because the endocrine glands, they form and secrete hormones. And these hormones have specific target organs. What do we mean by that? We just had an example. We had aldosterone, just to review. And what was the target organ for aldosterone? Distal convoluted tubule, right. So we learn not only the glands, but their target organs. And each of these individual organs has its unique cytology. Each gland unique cytology. So now, what are our endocrine glands? These you know. It's just a matter of putting them together in a unit. Names of endoglands. One we've already studied, the pineal gland. Then we have the gonads, the ovaries, and the testes, plural. What's the big one on the anterior aspect of your neck? Thyroid. What's on the back of the thyroid? Parathyroid. We had it with our osteoclasts. We have 7 of them. So what's the 6? We've studied it a little bit. Produces our aldosterone, adrenal cortex, adrenal gland. We'll put adrenal. And then what's the master of the endocrine symphony? The pituitary. The conductor of the endocrine, I should say. The pituitary. So let's look at these briefly. The pineal, we knew that was posterior part of the epithalamus. And it controls your circadian rhythm. Let's put regulates, better word. Regulates circadian rhythm. Produces melatonin. Many people were taking melatonin to reduce jet lag until we started letting them know what else melatonin can do. It can inhibit the gonads. In their development. You know anybody taking melatonin today? Isn't it interesting how it dropped out? Everybody was so eager till they found out this additional concomitant here. All right, that's basically what we've learned about the pineal. Of course, you can have a whole course on the pineal. The ovaries and testes we're going to cover when we study the male and female reproductive systems, but just briefly. The ovary will house the ova. The eggs. And they'll mature in their maturation. You notice I was very careful to say that the ovary does not develop the ova. Where are the ova developed? They're developed in the yolk sac. They migrate into the ovary to mature and develop. So ova originate in yolk sac. The Ovary does not produce them. It allows them to mature there. We produce two hormones here. What are the two hormones coming from the ovaries? Estrogen and progesterone. Produce estrogen and progesterone. Now, in contrast, the testes do produce the sperm. They'll mature elsewhere. We'll see when we develop it. So the testes, plural, do produce sperm. The hormone coming from the testis? Testosterone. Everybody knows that. Steroid coming from the testis, as its name implies. And then our next one will be the thyroid. We can say a little more about thyroid because this is the only chance we'll have to discuss it. What does thyroid mean? Shield. We're familiar with it with the thyroid cartilage. So we would have a shield of cartilage. As we look at the larynx, this would be the thyroid cartilage. What cartilage was immediately inferior? Cricoid. Good for you. Cricoid cartilage. And then we start our rings of cartilage that are surrounding what? To the trachea. They're not C-shaped. They're not complete rings, as you know. So we'll put in a few of these here with a purpose in mind. So these are tracheal rings. So now we can put in our thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is a bilobed, meaning it has two lobes. Bilobed gland. The lobes are connected by an isthmus. Connected by isthmus. And the isthmus will cover, thank you, the second and fourth tracheal cartilages. Isthmus covers 2 to 4 cartilages. So we've got 2 here. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll put in our isthmus over 2, down over 4, and then we'll have the lobes out here. So we can mark off our gland in this fashion. So now, as young anatomists, when somebody says, does a thyroid gland cover the thyroid cartilage? And what can you answer? No, it's just independent down here. Let's look at our slides and then we'll continue this next time. Could I have first slide, please? This is a slide of the ureter. And you can see this epithelium it's all collapsed. This is what we call transitional. You can say it doesn't look like any epithelium you've seen before. But when the ureter is full, this will stretch out. But you can see the other muscle layers in the ureter, which will allow for these spaced contractions every 2 to 3 minutes. In the next one, now this is transitional epithelium in the bladder. In the next one, and this is a section through the human urinary bladder. Here's the epithelium here, and you can see how much smooth muscle is in the wall that's going to contract to expel that urine, going in many directions with its stretch receptors. In the next one, and this now is the male bladder, and you can see the orifice or opening for the ureters, the trigone, the urethra, the prostate. In the next one, and now this is the back, so this will bring in more things than we see. We'll get these when we study the reproductive system. We have the seminal vesicles, we have the vas deferens bringing in the sperm. They'll meet here in the prostatic urethra, but here's the ureter coming down with the seminal duct here and the seminal vesicles inferior to the ureter. In the next one, and now we get the whole male urethra. Up here we had our internal sphincter, the urinary bladder here, the prostate here, the prostatic urethra, the membranous urethra here with the urogenital diaphragm here, giving us a short, it's definitely shorter than an inch, isn't it? The new literature is saying this is, we used to say, oh, it was a ½ inch here. This is an inch. And then we come down to the cavernous urethra, which we'll see will be surrounded by the cavernous portions of the penis. But that's roughly 7. But internal sphincter, external sphincter. Next one. And this is showing what? What's it look like? It's ciliated. I'm going to skip it. It looks like oviduct. It doesn't belong. Next one. Now, as we look at the male, a lateral view of the male pelvis, here we have our sigmoid colon coming down, our rectum coming down to the anus, and the external anal sphincter down here. Here we have the male urinary bladder with the prostate, prostatic urethra, the urogenital diaphragm, the membranous urethra, and then coming on out into the cavernous urethra. In the next one, and this one gets us up to the pineal gland here, posterior epithalamus. Here's our thalamus. Next one. And this is the ovary, where we have the ova have arrived. All the ova are going to be there much before birth, and they'll be in different stages of development during your reproductive period. You do not get new ova in your ovary after birth. In the next one, and this is the lumen, I'll be finished in a second, of the testis, and these are the developmental stages of the sperm. These are called acrosomes. We'll learn about those on the developing sperm. In the next one, and this shows the thyroid gland here with its isthmus and its lobes, trachea beneath, thymus down here. Next one, I think that will show, we'll talk about the internal aspect of the thyroid, but its unique characteristic of its cellular structure like no other organ in the body. So we'll learn that next time. Enjoy your afternoon.